I don't feel like he's gone yet. I think what I really loved him saying is that it matters that people think about you.
As Matt was a re-energizing, invigorating voice to be like, nah, man, you got to fight every day to make sure, you know what I'm saying, big or small, we deserve to be in the room. And to see and meet Matt Chan and knowing his history and his career and at his age to still be like fighting the fight.
Well, welcome everybody to Unfiltered. I'm Enrique Cerna, along with Debora Juarez, former Seattle City Council member, and a good pal from Converge Media, the founder there, Omari, Salisbury. A little bit somber because it was a week ago today that we lost our good pal, Matt Chan. And Matt was my partner on the Chino Y Chicano podcast. And of course, Matt and I had a friendship for 45 years. He was my best friend. He'd been battling cancer since, almost 2 years now. And then last week, it got him and he passed away. So I thought we'd spend some time really talking about Matt and what he meant to us and also what he did in the community, which, that was, I think, perhaps the most meaningful thing to him, that he was able to really become a kind of a source of power in the Chinatown International District. So, ladies first, Ms. Juarez.
It has been a sad week, and we knew it was coming. And some of us, you obviously were talking to him, but texting with him. I was texting with him for the Oregon and the ducks and the beavers, and it's some of the talk that we were having before we went live here about mortality and losing someone close, and when people leave us. And I have a friend whose father was killed unexpectedly last week, 2 weeks ago, and just saying that, your brain and your DNA hasn't understood that they're gone. You can physically see they're not here, but your brain and everything else and all your senses still feel like they're here. And that's a real honor to still feel that. And I was encouraging this person and us as well, is we can still feel that. And you were saying that Omari, I was just telling Enrique, last night, I went back and listened to episode 86, April of 2023, when Matt and Enrique talked about his cancer. And I'd learned that he had cancer before, like a dozen years ago. And I was just really struck not only about the banter and friendship between you and the kinship, but just like how he talked about the mortality and being a storyteller and what was important. And it was important that people think about you. He's a lifelong learner. Even though he made enough money to retire, do what he wanted, then he could do things, be an activist, write more, support people. And when he kept saying that, I know you used this clip when you did that post, like, was it a week ago, podcast?
Yeah, almost a week ago now, yeah.
He just kept saying, I'm okay. I had a great life. I don't have any regrets. And facing it, and I don't know, I got real emotional. I got all that out, but I mean, and I want to thank you, Enrique, for delivering and having Matt there for us, in his voice and his laughter. And, I know this sounds kind of odd, but I don't feel like he's gone yet. I don't. So he's still here, obviously, and everyone says that when someone passes, but I really feel that. And that whole feeling about just hearing his voice. And I think what I really loved him saying is that it matters that people think about you. That just stuck.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful thought about the end of the day, if you're passing or you're going to, that the most important thing, that it was really important that people think about you and that you've thought about them.
I think it meant a lot to him to be able to talk about his cancer because it was cathartic. He could get it out and we could talk about it, and that's what we did. But I also think he really appreciated when people would check on him because it just kept him like somebody cared. and also that it kept him going. I mean, because then it was like he had this energy that he would get back from people because feeling their concern for him. So, Omari, when did you first meet Matt?
I would say I met Matt formally probably like three years ago. But I bumped into him for years around the city, and I think that for me with Matt, which was really good. What being in a smaller media and in this market, access is always difficult, and then being ethnic media, it's even harder. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of times the people who guard the doors of access to City Hall, they don't respect you if you're smaller. They don't respect you if it's ethnic. They're doing mathematical calculations in their head to say like, well, there's not enough votes and viewership. They got some wild algorithms up there at City Hall, and they use that as a way to keep people out. And it's real easy at times for us to just be like, man, it doesn't matter what's going on in the city. Let's just focus on something else. It's too hard. It's too difficult. Our resources are small. Let's put it somewhere else. And the thing about Matt is Matt was a re-energizing and invigorating voice to be like, nah, man, you got to fight every day to make sure, you know what I'm saying, big or small, we deserve to be in the room. These people need to show up. They have to talk to you, and for a while I kind of felt like I was out there on my own, kind of with that type of voice. And to see and meet Matt Chan, and knowing his history and his career, and at his age to still be like fighting the fight. Our longest discussion was about how ethnic media across Seattle can not only cover like, of course, the mayor, city council, things like that, but really government as a whole, and making sure that government is held accountable to our different communities here. And so, from jump, we just clicked because, I think that I know that we have a similar passion. And, I'm one of those people, I always say I'm smart enough to know what I don't know. And that being the case, when you don't know, Matt Chan was the perfect person to have around because his life journey and experience, he knew, like he's like a walking library, and being able to bounce ideas and things off of him. I think that, of course, there's so many communities with his loss that suffer a loss. But one community for sure is our media community, and especially our smaller media community, because, at times he would go and he'd be fighting and representing all of us whenever he showed up somewhere and was demanding access.
He really admired you, Omari, because he admired your just this passion you had, particularly during the protests and how you were out there. And I think when he met you, he just was sort of in awe with how you were doing so much with so little. And so
I can echo that.
Yeah.
I can echo that. He was really, I don't want to say starstruck, but he is, and I remember him using the word cat. Like, yeah, and I'm like, isn't that kind of a 70s word?
Yeah, well, we're from the 70s, so yeah.
Yeah,
But
one smart cat.
Yeah. And I think what he also admired was how you had really worked your way into gaining, the respect, and the Durkin administration during that time, I remember listening to the press conferences, they would go to you right away in the beginning because you became a voice of what was happening in the community. And so Matt, that's exactly what Matt wanted for ethnic media to be looked at and to be respected and to be considered, okay, this is a valuable source for our community here. And we as government better listen to it. So, go ahead.
getting back to what Matt was saying about Omari, and we had other conversations as well, but I think one thing that he saw in Omari is this young blood media guy coming up is that the caution that he always had is people of color should not have to code switch. They can be themselves.
Right.
They can, their voice, they don't have to be, you know, the CNN white guy with the tie talking in a monotone voice because that's what everyone's used to. Let's talking to you, Channel 4, 5, and 7, that you could have somebody like Omari in the front row. And I think Matt and I, we would talk about that. Like what he was saying is that, you know, it's like young men like Omari and other folks, because I'm not a media person, had to legitimize us being in those rooms and unapologetically being ourselves. This is how we talk. This is how we emote. This is not an angry Black man. This is not an angry Latina. This isn't some crazy, you know, these are media people that are journalists that have the right to deliver themselves in the news in the way they see the world, just like all the other folks. Mm-hmm. And I also learned from that over and over that a disagreement, it doesn't equal hate. Just because you disagree on an intense topic, it doesn't equal hate or cancel culture. That, you know, it's a conversation. And that's what he wanted, the conversation. Right. Because he felt like when we would talk, he had just as much to learn as well. And I really appreciated that whole attitude about, you know, disagreement is not hate. It's a conversation that has to happen.
Yeah. He disliked cancel culture, and he disliked, people that pushed ideology over content and things.
And sense and practicality, and discipline and respect.
Right. One thing I was going to tell the both of you, and you may already know this, but one of the things that Matt had been pushing for, and he'd been talking to Rob Dunlop at Cascade PBS, which used to be KCTS, where I worked for a long time, about creating a ethnic media center. And so as he got more ill toward the end there, he asked me to take it over. So we are actually going to have a meeting. We're trying to get people together to, what can we do to create this ethnic media center? What could it be? And the people, yeah, it could be. Yeah, it could be. And the other thing is that I've had people respond to me now and say, you know, hey, Matt called me and said I needed to attend this thing. And this is right before he passed away. So he was still working it. He was still working it. I have to tell you, I told you about this earlier, but just a few hours before he passed away, I got a phone call from him, and it was actually his son, Max, that was calling, saying that Matt wanted to talk to me. And and it caught me off guard, but he was at the time disoriented, but he was still, his voice was straight, and he goes, we got to do something. We got to do something on the podcast, you know? And I go, Matt, okay, what do you want to do? Do you want to talk about where you're at now or what? And he goes, I don't know, you figure it out, but we got to do something. And then I got off the phone later, and then his son texted me and said, hey, you know, he's going downhill, but thank you for taking the call. But up until the end, he was still thinking about what could be done and what needed to be done in the community. And one of the things that he wanted was for us to continue doing this, because he really liked the idea of kind of four voices coming together. Of course, he was one of them. And he said, this has lots of potential. Keep doing it. So just so you know, so we'll keep pushing the cause here. But as you all know, that Matt had a sense of humor, and it was pretty caustic at times, or funny, or weird.
I don't think it was called.
That's actually, yeah, you would not think it's you completely. Yeah, totally. You and Matt had that.
Sorry that when you guys had your show on April 14th, 2023, you did say, well, Matt, you are kind of an asshole. So I want the people who are listening to go back and roll the tape. So, yeah.
It's true. You know, I would,
you know.
Yeah, when I often did that, particularly when we were at the shows about his cancer journey, partly because I would get kind of emotional, you know, or about a situation. And so it was like my way of just, okay, we're getting a little too serious now, so I better call him an asshole to get back on track. And then that would loosen things up. And, you know, Matt had this sense of humor that was just, he would come up with stuff that, of course, good thing that other people weren't listening to our conversations because it was just hilarious. He had interesting observations and about lots of things. He could have been a stand-up comedian kind of guy. Because he was good at having an observation about something and then turning it into a funny anecdote about life. And so
also let you be the straight guy.
Yes.
So, yeah. And that's what I used to tease him about. Like, it's like, Enrique's there to kind of moderate, but also be your straight guy to done.
Totally true. So totally true, because I was a guy that was I managed the clock,
track.
Everything we were doing, and so that he could rant and he could say what he wanted to say. Let's talk a bit about what he did in the community. And of course, his big thing, he cared so much about the Chinatown International District. He was teaching at the University of Washington for a while. Of course, he taught media there. I actually visited his classes, even taught a couple of them when he was couldn't. The thing about the community meant so much to him, and he fought for it. Of course, we all know what happened. The biggest thing was what happened when they tried to expand the homeless shelter near the ID and the CID. And basically, he took it upon himself to work with the folks in the community to kind of create a narrative. He used his storytelling skills.
Oh, he sure did.
Yes, to build that. Yeah.
Masterful. He plays a long game on that. It was masterful. I ain't gonna lie, as a former trial lawyer, he would have been a great trial lawyer.
Yeah. And the thing that I really blew me away was how he got the elders in the community, particularly the women in the Chinatown International District, to come. I have photos of leading these marches, and you have all of these senior Asian women out there. He also had his wife Guy, who played a big role because she speaks the language. Matt really didn't. But so she could communicate and tell them, what was going on. That was a big deal because he got people to come out of their homes to really fight for the community. And I think you all know in our communities, that's what we need, to get people to get out there and to kind of the grassroots things, because sometimes they won't come out. They'll bitch and moan about everything, but they won't come out. But that's what he did. Yeah. Yeah. Omari, you saw that.
Yeah, no, and it's tough. And the more things become digital, and social, the harder it is for people to people really feel like they doing something. And sometimes they are with, a retweet or a comment or something like that. And there's a difference. That's what I always tell people. And Matt comes from an era where, this was just intuitive. But I always tell people, I'm like, listen, man, all these likes and stuff, don't live in no echo chamber. Because if you can't get somebody to leave their house and show up for a cause, then what is you really doing? Some people can't leave their house, but if they're not actually writing a letter that's logged and registered somewhere, you know what I'm saying, or an email, what are you doing? So you can sit here and make a post and you see this post, it has 5,000 likes. But the same person tells somebody, show up. We got a community meeting. We have to do this and that. No one shows up. And it's hard to get people out their house now because they feel like they're impacting the movement by retweeting something. But the movement is moving with or without you. You got to show up in City Hall. You got to show up in these planning meetings. You got to show up. And so Matt had an ability to really cut through all the barriers and reasons why people could conveniently say that they're pushing the process. And, the way that he talked, I mean, he probably said it different. He'd be like, man, that's crap.
Yeah. I'm stronger. He'd say bullshit. That's
bullshit.
Yeah. No, yeah. with the F-bomb on top of that. So.
Yeah, I mean, and really call people out. I mean, we see this the same thing. And this is our challenge: is that in our community, we get people who online complain about the school and the school district, but ain't never been to a PTA meeting, ain't never been to the school, ain't never talked to the teacher, ain't never been like whatever. Or when we talk about, I think I talked about it last episode. They're like 23rd Union looks the way it does because the community got activated to come to planning meetings and say, hey, man, all right, we might not own this property no more, but our legacy is still here. And that's why you see all that black art, everything else. It is hard to get people out their house on a cause. And Matt Chan and Magic did for decades, which is really dope. It's an incredible legacy.
Yeah. And that's where the storytelling came in. He helped set a narrative about how they would handle this. And that was what they were doing was not, they were not opposed to people that were homeless or finding shelter for them. What he was opposed to was, a government entity making a decision without really the voice of the people involved. And he made that clear. He says, we're not against the homeless. And I think actually that was a big turning point. And anybody that tried to turn that, he could come right back and say, no, that's not the case at all. It's that the CID had become this dumping ground. And for years, and he brought the story. We brought the history of all this stuff in the podcast that we did, and Matt used that too.
Yeah, that's the same CID. People forget that every year when there was a protest, when protests used to happen more frequently, that's where people got dumped. SPD every time. They ain't never go north. They ain't never go to uptown and dump. You know what I'm saying? And push people there. They ain't pushing the Lower Queen Anne or South Lake Union. They push them right there into the CID. And, we witnessed that and everything else
during the protests. Yeah, they did that.
I witnessed it. That is where that's where they would dump everything. And even the night 4 years ago, as we captured there, the very first night, and that's where the protests were swept to, and the CID. A long history of just being disrespected. And it's a neighborhood literally in plain sight of downtown. You go up to Municipal Tower, you see the CID right there. But, consistently disrespected, overlooked. You know what I'm saying? It's the voice. It's just like that first night of the protest, I was down there filming and these guys want to start breaking into these, into the businesses and everything. Now I said, man, look at this. This is a neighborhood that's defenseless. I said, tough guys, this is a neighborhood that's defenseless. And I remember saying that night. I said, come to the CD. We're going to.
I remember. I'll take that chop down here.
Yeah.
That's the thing is that it's like we see that. And it's like it was really dope to see like Matt, who was older, at least to me, who older. But like his messaging could penetrate cross generation.
Right. Yeah.
That's what you're saying. And that's the mark of a true storyteller and someone who's a true believer of the story they're telling.
Yeah. And one thing Matt did too is that he produced a piece on his own about who killed Donnie Chin, who was a community activist and sort of the protector of the CID, and his murder still has not been solved. But every time we would talk to Adrian Diaz or whoever we were talking to from Seattle Police, he always brought it up. Where are we at with that investigation? We don't want this. Community wants to know. Are you still working on it? And he's kept that alive. And that's a story that until this gets some resolve with an arrest or some sort, I think. We have a responsibility to try to keep that alive with the cop shop. So I think that's important too.
I think so. When Omari was talking about, he said Matt is old to him. Let's go to the whole boomer thing. Let me preface it with this: all three of you guys are media people, journalists. I always felt like I'm still learning. Because I'm lawyer, ex-politician. My brain thinks differently. And this program has been, and what I was hesitant to do it. I remember Matt and I talked, and I said, I spent at least most of my career, over 35 years as a lawyer and as a politician, having to be very careful about my words. And sometimes I would let loose because I didn't care. I just got to the point where I thought I was going to go mad if I didn't let my real self out. And Matt is like, well, that's what we want to see. And it's not healthy, Debora, whatever whether you call yourself a BIPOC or whatever they're calling us now, the voice and the legitimacy and your experience and the way that you emote that is important. And you have to give yourself permission to do that, because that was my hesitancy. And I also like what Omari was saying, what she's saying in a different way and different generational words. But I think this is, I think you agree with me on this too, Enrique, that what I liked about Matt is that he would not allow us to cloak ourselves in victimization.
Yeah.
That he would, as Mara was saying, being engaged, getting out of the house, going to the community meeting, going to the PTA, going to the school board, meeting with your teacher. What Omari is a shorthand is saying, you need to get involved. You just can't sit back and drink, the tears of the white liberals and someone's going to ride in on a horse and save you, because that shit ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
We're still here, not just because we're resilient and, we're so strong. We've not let this group infantize us.
Yeah.
And that is my biggest fight with some of the power. Treating me as a child, that I'm powerless, that I when people say make space, center, and uplift, those three words just offend me on every level, because it's not your job, white person, to make space, because it's not your space. I'm already there. I don't need your permission. It's not yours to give. And a lot of that I couldn't articulate as a politician, and certainly not, on TV or when I'm dealing with bigger groups of people that are not of the same mindset as mine. But I appreciated that Matt gave me a safe space. I wouldn't call it safe because he would just give me so much shit about it. But he would just encourage me, like, you need to get it out. You need to say it. I said, Matt, I don't have the luxury that you have of your broad experience and not being an elected. So I was hesitant to come on your show the first time. And I talked to Matt, I talked to you, I talked to Matt. And, I said, I don't have the luxury to just be Debora and say what I think. And he's like, yeah, you do. In fact, you have a responsibility. People will take it, they'll like it, they may not like it, but it's a conversation. And that's when he got me thinking, yeah, he's right. I got so used to people treating us that they're, I'm going to make space for you. I'm going to be an ally. Okay, thank you. By centering, you just centered yourself. So, okay. I just appreciated that Matt and I spoke the same language, but he had a better vocabulary, was much more articulate about it.
I don't know. You do fine. The two of you had so much in common when it comes for things.
Because we're caustic.
Yeah.
We like to cuss. We both like to cuss.
Yeah. That's for sure. I do too, but maybe not as much as the two of you. But okay, well, another thing that Matt did is, and you got to remember, he did this in retirement too. He just did it because he had a passion for it. Is that he created videos and messaging for candidates of color and was successful with it. State Senator Joe Wynn, King County Council Member Gurmai Zahala, Sam Cho, Port Commissioner Hamdi Mohammed, Toshiko Hasagawa. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. He shot their videos. He came up with the languaging. He helped them with strategy, and he helped them tell their story and how you would do it. Because many of them, when they started, although they might have had community awareness of who they are, nobody outside the community knew them. So through social media like YouTube and Facebook and all of that, he shot these pieces really stylized, and that's how people got to know him, and that's how that helped them get elected. That was a tremendous thing to have happen. Plus, it benefited them because they had a guy that really understood what messaging was all about. So, I mean, Debora, do you ever wish you would have done your campaign stuff?
Well, I'll tell you something I haven't shared with a lot of people. Maybe I share with Omari offline, but so I'm taking a break for a couple of years, and my political career is not over, but Matt was teasing me that he was going to be around to shoot that. So that was our kind of joke up until, I don't know, about a month ago.
Yeah.
So, when he was teasing me about, I better get better at learning how to, well, as you were saying, you weren't here, Omari, when Enrique was telling me when we were getting ready on the camera to take my glasses off. So he was telling me that I had to get better at on presentation on this media.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But that was funny. I said, I'm used to government Zoom meetings where you're like, okay, public comment's been an hour now. We've been screamed at for about 55 minutes for everything, including every world across every war in every country. So now we got to get to today's agenda. I said, yeah, but you're looking at the tired me, Matt. That's not the real me. So that's what he was teasing me about.
Yeah.
Like, peppier.
Yeah. It's all about presentation and things like that.
So can we look to the Omaris of the world to be the new Matt Chans of, staying authentic, being that storyteller, paying attention, lifelong learner, bringing these issues to the forefront without this veneer of this crazy cancel culture. Again, I'll say woke, people are going to get mad, and I don't mean it in a derogatory manner. I meant it in the way that it was supposed to be used, the word woke. I mean, are we looking at the young Omari to bring us to that place?
I know I see a lot of gray in that beard, though. Omari, I think he's doing it, and we just got to make sure that you have the support to keep doing it.
Yeah, I think that it's just an interesting city that we live in, and that makes the dynamic that much harder because the level of inauthenticity of people who claim to actually like Black people, let alone support them, or other people of color. Other markets, man, it's really things, oddly enough, run a lot smoother because the people in power and power structures and people with access, man, they just tell you to your face, no, nigga. You know what I'm saying? Anybody who's selling or doing anything, you want a quick no. But see here, we get a lot of people, like I said, man, they voted for Barack, they got Michelle's book, but they don't really like Black people.
They're called
Black people,
Oh, there's a new word. They're called foot bombers.
Foot bombers.
And so it's like our challenge here, and I went to college in North Carolina. That's where I learned radio and everything else. Because you could easily spot the opportunities for acting. Boom, okay, we're going to, and you knew, man, that's them people over there, right? So we spend our wheels a lot of time. We waste a lot of time and energy here in Seattle with disingenuousness of people here who have really no intention of really being supportive, let alone access or anything for Black people or people of color. But it's PC, like you said, to create space and make opportunity and say, our vocabulary has been hijacked. And then the same people use our vocabulary against us to make it seem like they're with us. And so I say all that to say is we ain't going nowhere. We continuously doubling and tripling down. And really for us, instead of, to be honest with you, instead of looking at this current structure and being like, oh, how do I continue to chip down this wall? It's like, man, we forging a whole new path. The way it's going to be obsolete because they've wasted too much time and energy for generations here in Seattle dealing with a system that's here. We're taking media and everything else in a whole nother direction, and we taking everybody with us. You know what I'm saying? Because that's what Jen would do. That's what he was doing every day. He was fighting two fights. He was fighting the structure, and he was forging a new path.
Right.
It's also giving people like me permission to say what I think and not feel like I have to apologize and go back and say, well, I learned another new word. Oh, you're going to like, Omari, that just talked about what you said about language and taking our words and our thoughts and then all of a sudden just messing it up for all of us. And that's called white jacked. Let Jack use white jacket.
I hadn't heard that one.
Make up your own shit. What is our stuff? Because then you make it goofy and stupid, and then it turns into a slur, And so what we originally came from our hearts and minds and our lived experience, now you all got it on a T-shirt and you're a big knucklehead. You're not helping the cause, man.
Right.
Sorry. Channeling Matt there.
But Omari, you bring up what you brought up is a really important thing, because that's Matt's vision was for, and with this ethnic media center is really so that the communities can have a voice and be able to create what's in their communities, so that then you're not counting on the white power structure.
The biggest thing that like what Converge is doing and what Converge is proving, because it's like we're constantly growing and evaluating the market, our situations and everything else. But it's like we went into 2024, man, just doubling down on our Blackness and on our community. Like, we no longer care. So here's the breakdown is that somebody comes on Converge, we've built this space where like we no longer care what other media and everything else is saying. It used to be like, oh, well, it's this, it don't matter. All we care about is our people, what our people, you know what I'm saying? That's our barometer. Our barometer is no longer, you know what I'm saying? It hasn't quite ever been, but our barometer is no longer so-and-so tweeted on Twitter and they said this, you know what I'm saying? So whatever. Man, I would use some Matt Chan words right now to tell you how I feel about that. But what I think what the future of it is, and what you're talking about, is if us focus on us, man, then people be all right. Let them do like at Converge. Think about this at Converge. We're still the same place where we had Mayor Harrell, right? And then who was just there the other day? Nikita Hall. You see what I'm saying? We're gonna have Morales was just there, and Councilmember Saka is coming up. You know what I'm saying? And so I only say that to say that it's like, just because it's our media doesn't mean that it's, one ideology or anything else. We got space and grace for disagree. We got people who are never gonna agree, but they got space and grace and opportunity to come on our platform and other platforms. And all we have to do is realize that, man, white ain't always right, man. And so just because that it's on these big mainstream platforms doesn't mean that has to be our arbiter of information and truth. We have highly capable media professionals, and man, Matt Chan is one amongst many. And it's a reprogramming of ourselves as people who consume news and information content. And our phrase for 2024 is, we are enough. That's our thing at Converge. We are enough. And that's what it is, man. You know what I'm saying? I like, damn, Matt.
He would be just saying he would be smiling. He would just, yeah.
We talked about, and we've all talked about it offline, and I've talked about it with Matt, and I want to go back to something Omari said about 2020, and with some distance, to see what it looks like. I find it interesting that KOW is going to do some kind of 2-part, graph that, what happened in 2020 and defund the police was a myth. And I thought to myself, I wish Matt was here. I would love to just take that apart and say, okay, KOW, yeah, okay, I see how you saw it. Some of us saw it differently, but we were in the front row of that shit show, and we lived in those places. We didn't come there with our bleeding heart liberal t-shirt bullshit. We lived this stuff, our lives. And so now they're going to have this big thing about, it was myths and blah, blah, blah. And I just think to myself, there's times like that, I just wish Matt would just take that apart. I'm looking to Omari, young blood Omari and their generation, to take that apart.
I'll just say this. I won't touch too much on this protest, but I'm going to tell you that it's been being whitewashed from in revisionist history from, from day one. And it's been revised by all sides. You know what I'm saying? It's been
all sides.
Revisionist history, you hear one side tell it that it was every day, it was all Antifa and all this and that. And which was like clearly you weren't there. Like your local barista and your bank teller and the construction worker laid off, you know, because of COVID. We're like all out there, man. You know what I'm saying? Like let's be clear. And then on the other side of this, you got this whole revisionist side of history around it. And I would just say that, man, if people ain't gonna tell the real story and the true story and everything else, should leave it alone. We get approached all the time by people for years now, from big names, from Netflix and from all these film companies. They want to come and they're like, man, we need to tell the story of the Seattle protest. One, they know they can't tell the whole story without Converge. So let's be interested to see what comes out in these retrospectives here. Yeah. See what I'm saying? But you know, two, it's like everybody be having their own narrative, and that's and their own object, their outcome that they're trying to get, and that's why we say no to everybody every year. And you know, I just not like I said, this is just whatever kind of topic for me. But you're right about that, Debora. That like people, this media here, what we should do, maybe that's one of the best things we could do at Converge to kind of honor Matt. It's going to take some time. We got the footage. You know, only people we put out, you know, everybody else is whatever, because you got to remember Converge was the only people in the room. We're the trusted broker. And so in the same day, we were in the city, the only people in the room. So it's funny to see all the outsides of people who were never in the rooms. We were actually the only people there. That might be something for Matt. You know what I'm saying?
Omari, that's the space that Matt talked about, that your front row seat, and then I'm in the back, I'm in the government side trying to keep it together, and I'm in conversations with the mayor, with Chief Best, with then, you know, Scogans, and all these different people in places about, because I was chairing parks. So I have a different perspective, but somehow Omari's perspective as a journalist, CD
on the street,
mine in the back about what I dealt with, and someone could describe me as angry, and I was thinking, you know what? You don't even know. This ain't even all about anger or Debora's just mad or it really wasn't that bad. No one has asked us to talk about when we were in the eye of the tornado. We weren't at, you know, some goofy white, I'm just going to say, some goofy white person all of a sudden feels bad about, you know, slavery and genocide in Native Americans, and they slap on the T-shirt, and they have like two black friends, and they're showing up and screaming about, you know, a bunch of bullshit that's never happened to them or their neighborhood. And I was so offended by that, to the point where my anger wasn't just like hate anger. It was this frustration, this point where I had no valve. And I have to say this, I really enjoyed having those talks with Matt offline, just on the phone about that, because he was one of the few people that asked me how I felt and how I feel now, hearing other people, as Omari said, a revisionist history. Now, then when I heard last week that, I don't listen to KOW, but someone told me, or it was on my feed, they're going to, the myth of, you know, 2020 and defund the police. And I thought, that is some bullshit. I ain't gonna listen to it. So I'm sure to get back to
Omari. Why don't you guys produce your own?
I mean,
you got to do that.
What's crazy is, like, you know, one of the conversations that people have in the neighborhood, it was like, you know, years ago around this after the protest, is that, you know, I mean, it's a lot of people showed up, man, for white people. Meaning that, like, a lot of lawyers, like, man, cats to be getting beat up by the police, man, have a case, call a lawyer, want to file something, they be like, yeah, no, we need, you know, we're not picking this up. You feel me? But then, like, on the protests, you know what I'm saying? There's lawyers everywhere. You feel me? Like, I mean, what would be interesting is like, you know, that there was still, in the protest, there was still a second-class citizenry of black folks. The black femmes who was leading the protest were pushed out by white men. You see what I'm saying? And maybe you saw a shift in the protest. You had all these black femmes out there every day out in front. And then near the end, there was no black, it was all white kids. You see what I'm saying? I mean, there's so many nuances that are there that if he wasn't there, then, like, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The cast wouldn't know. And like I said, it's the whitewashing of one of the biggest events, you know what I'm saying, in our city.
It's like cosplay. It's like watching cosplay. I went to the thing up at U Village, and I watched all these white people. I had to see one black person all lay down on the ground for as long as George Floyd was on the ground. And I was there at the KUOW reporter because she was there, so I was kind of talking to her. And I thought to myself, this is some bullshit. You really care about black and brown folk? Then make sure that you don't volunteer. Get involved. If you're going to do that, if you're going to be that ally, then be that ally. You know what I'm saying?
I will say this, you know what I'm saying, because it's important to say this, is the one thing that came out of there that I saw is that there was, it's not an overwhelming number, but there was a good number of young white people who were really green-thumbed and came out there, and after the protest ended, they learned things like mutual aid. They learned things like, you know what I'm saying? And they're still out there. There's probably 40, 50 different organizations, you know what I'm saying? And the whole point is their cause might just be like, okay, feeding at an encampment or handing out, a blanket, you know what I'm saying? Or even lobbying City Hall. But the whole point is that it wasn't just like, oh, I'm here for the moment and now I'm gone. You see what I'm saying? They found a mission and they've continued with their mission. Now, a lot of people was there for the camera, the Black Lives Matter side that was in their yard, in their window back then, it's no longer there. And, it was a moment. We still live this.
Yeah, I know. All the neighbors that had them around my house, they're all gone now. The Black Lives Matter and hate doesn't live here. I think I saw one in the last 2 years. They're all gone. And Omari, those weren't the folks that showed up in front of my house. So I'm just going, that's another show. We're getting back to what we're saying. I'm looking to Omari's generation and Omari's media chops to bring up all these other young bloods, to be in the front row, in the front seat, to tell people to get involved. And this is who we are. We're not going anywhere. Be an ally. This is what an ally looks like. It is not virtue signaling. It's not cosplaying. It's not, moving now. They're going to threatening another chop that they're going to, okay, here we go again, How about we do some economic development in neighborhoods that need things? How about you use your role if you work at a bank or an organization or a nonprofit or a foundation that has money that invests, that builds low-income housing. Yes, that's nice. But how about some incredibly economic centers that give people jobs? And you've heard me say this over and over. And that's what I would hope that these folks would see.
Yeah.
Not the T-shirt, not the bumper sticker.
Matt would love this conversation. He would love
it. He would be with me on this.
Yeah. But he'd also be saying, Omari, you got all the footage. You need to put together the story that you saw. I think that's really important, dude. Really important.
And Omari was pretty cool. Omari was talking to me in real time during 2020. I can honestly say that we were talking, and I was talking to another reporter, and I won't say the person's name now, in real time. So when there was some blowback against me, I'm glad that reporter went right back at him and said, oh, no, I was in real time with Councilmember Juarez. Yeah. I was on the phone with her.
What people realize is that, like, man, it's a position that we had then. It's a position that we're still in space right now as a trusted broker. And so, also we were the only people in the room because the city was always in negotiation with different protest groups.
Yeah.
It should have been a small thing about where barricades go, where ambulances are going to go. If someone has a medical emergency, what's the protocol for whatever? We were the ones who were in the room. You know what I'm saying? Because we were the one group that was trusted by the city and was trusted by the different protest groups. And so it's, man, you're right, man. I need to,
you got to do it. I'll help you.
Yeah.
I'll help you.
I'll give you all my journals. I'll give you all my journals for that summer and fall. And you will see.
I'll tell you this. Why we haven't made anything is because we didn't go out there as filmmakers. Like if there was like, oh, it's going down, let's make a film. Then we probably would have done something, man. We really kind of, even naively, because we didn't know what was coming, we just went to go and show our neighborhood, the Central District, the South Bend, what was happening. That was our only intention. You know what I'm saying? And in the interim, man, we interviewed hundreds of people and talked to everybody and was on the front line and whatever. And so the intention was never to do something. And for me, in my mind, I'm like, yeah, people are just seeing this in real time. And so there's never been an impetus to make a film because that's not what we went out there for. We just went out there to keep our neighborhood, you know what I'm saying, informed. But this conversation that we've had right here, it's sparking something.
Yeah.
We need to do something.
Well, you got to.
Man.
You got to. If I can help in any way, yes.
Matt asked me something, and it was like obviously over a year later, but Omari asked me, and he probably doesn't even remember when it was happening. Omari was one of a dozen people in the community, in the Black community, that understood and could see both sides. And he's the one that would always use that term, space for grace, which I appreciated, but would check in and say, how are you doing? How are you doing? When people were showing up here and other stuff. And Matt and I talked about that. And I told him I never really thought about it. I later, not in the moment. And he kept saying, there's a story there. There's a story there. And I said, yeah, but I don't like to think about it. It's painful. He's like, there's a story there, though. And it's not your story. You have to share that story. You're so right. Maybe that's what I need to do, too.
Yep.
Because he's a storyteller. That's how people know, Debora.
You said you journaled about it. You said you journaled about it. Come on, go back and you got a story.
And they depressed the hell out of me. I told you that's what
we're still the Matt Chan effect is still there because he's got us talking about what can we do, what should we do, and it's all about storytelling, telling stories about people and the voices that don't get to be heard. And that was what Matt was all about,
Also, too, that we can, just because it's like looking at something from five people look at something from different angles, doesn't mean that their truth is not reality.
Right.
It's just a different angle that they saw it. So when you hear me complain about certain things, I'm not saying that every white person is bad or whatever. That is just the way it looked to me on a certain angle. And again, we're going back to disagreement or how we saw things differently doesn't mean that it's hateful. It just means that somebody else wants to hear what I saw, how I saw it, instead of the reporter from KOW who said, "Oh, it wasn't really that bad."
True. No,
okay.
It's and again, those voices that need to be heard. That's what Matt was all about. Well, I'm going to wrap things up here, but one of the things I do want to say about Matt is he. When his cancer diagnosis, it was in almost 2 years ago now. And even in spite of that, he was still working in the community. That's when the whole thing about the homeless shelter started. And there were times when he was actually too ill to get out there, but Guy was out there, his wife, and still he was kind of directing things from the backside of doing that. And he, up until the end, he one of his last projects was to do a video for the gala of Wing Luke, which was a beautiful piece, by the way.
Yeah.
And he still was at it until the end because that was his passion, that was his life's work, and he's left us a lot of great things. And the one thing about the way media is now, we can still dial up his voice. And so that's fun.
When I listened to your show last night from a year ago, another sentence struck me because I'm such a nerd. I start taking notes because I was emotional. I thought if I just write things out. And Matt says something like, what did he say? I earned the right to do what I want to do.
True.
And I'm a lifelong learner and I earned the right. No one gave it to me. I earned it. And in my retirement, I'm going to do this. I'm gonna be an activist, a storyteller, go Ducks. And I had the laugh how he said that he wanted to make sure he was around long enough to see the Seahawks.
Oh man, gonna miss that guy. Hey, thank you, Debora and Omari, for taking the time.
Thank you.
Hey, this is only episode number 2. We're gonna keep doing this unfiltered thing because we're gonna be doing it because Matt said we should, and we're gonna do that. All right.
Well, it's Unfiltered, also known as the Steelheads.
Okay, well, all right. We'll do a little subtitle. All right, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Omari. Thank you, Enrique. Thank you, Matt.